Welcome. We're glad you're here. Take a moment and consider this with us. What if something that sounds right is not right at all? Have you ever heard something that sounded good at first, yet something about it didn't fully sit right with you? Not enough to reject it, but enough to hesitate. That moment matters more than you think, because that is where discernment begins, not in certainty, but in awareness. Discernment is the Spirit helping us recognize what aligns with truth and what does not. It is not something we create, and it does not appear all at once. It develops as we remain grounded in Scripture and begin to apply what we hear with understanding. Consider this. At first, it's easy to ignore that hesitation. It doesn't feel urgent, and nothing seems immediately wrong, so we continue listening. But over time, ignoring those moments has an effect. What once caused us to pause begins to feel familiar, and what once felt clear becomes less defined. That is not a sudden change. It is gradual. And because it's gradual, it often goes unnoticed. The more we move past what we sense, the less sensitive we become to it. This is what makes discernment necessary. Sometimes what is presented appears consistent on the surface, yet contains subtle differences that shift meaning over time. These differences are not always obvious, which is why they are often accepted without question. Discernment does not react to what is obvious. It recognizes what is slightly out of place before it becomes fully established. When those small differences are repeated, they begin to reshape understanding, not in a way that feels dramatic, but in a way that slowly replaces what was once clear. And over time, what was originally accepted as truth becomes mixed with something else, and the distinction is no longer as clear as it once was. This is how confusion begins to cause a shift in us. Gradually. Discernment does not come from trying to question everything. It comes from knowing what is true well enough that anything outside of it becomes noticeable right away. It comes from spending time in Scripture, returning to it consistently, and allowing it to shape our understanding. When truth is established this way, it becomes a reference point, not something that shifts with every new message. Discernment is not about becoming suspicious of everything. It is about becoming steady. It allows us to listen without being influenced, and to consider without immediately accepting. It creates space to pause, not out of doubt, but out of a desire to remain aligned with what is true. Because of this, not everything we hear is meant to be received without examination. Even when something is presented clearly or confidently or from a familiar voice, it still needs to be measured. Discernment reminds us that truth is not determined by presentation, but by agreement with Scripture. And that agreement can only be recognized when there is a clear understanding of what truth is through Scripture. This matters more now because of the number of voices that are constantly speaking. Messages are continuous, and they often overlap, making it difficult to separate what is consistent from what is not. Without discernment, it becomes easier to accept what sounds right in the moment instead of what has been proven to be true over time. There are moments when something sounds encouraging, yet does not fully agree with Scripture. In those moments, the natural response is often to continue without examining it. But discernment is found in that pause, not in reacting quickly, but in taking the time to consider what is being heard. That pause is where understanding begins to form more clearly. We are not left to navigate this alone. The Spirit was given to guide us into truth, not to leave us uncertain. As we remain grounded in Scripture and continue to apply what we learn, discernment becomes clearer. Not because everything becomes obvious, but because truth becomes familiar. Scripture gives us a clear instruction when it comes to this. We are not told to accept everything we hear simply because it sounds good. We are told to examine, to test, and to remain watchful. Not out of unbelief, but out of responsibility. And if what we are hearing does not agree with what has already been established in the Word, then it needs to be reconsidered, no matter how convincing it may sound.
If this message has strengthened your faith, consider subscribing. Remember to hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Visit the channel for more faith-based videos that explore Scripture and encourage faithful discipleship. Thank you for watching.